Okay, so today is Tuesday, August 8th, 2024, at just after 10:30 in the morning. This is a difficult, well, not difficult, but a big day for me and for us as a family. Today, I am going to go with my older brother to get our mother, who's been in a motion rehab center, rehabbing an injured hand and legs for the last 7 weeks since the beginning of July. I'm going to take her back home. I'm actually going to be staying there with her for some period of time, X number of days or weeks even, to see how well she does living alone at her house. And who knows? We don't know what's going to happen after that. It depends on observation based on how she performs, but based on how things are for her when she comes home. And so I will be gone for the next. I don't even know how long. Okay, it could be a week, could be a month, could be permanent. I mean, if we decide that Mom cannot live independently at her house any longer, one of the options is for me to move back there with her. So I have no idea and I have generally no idea what's going to happen. I have some speculation that some things are more likely than others, but honestly, I don't really have any clue what is going to actually unfold or where I'm going to even be in the upcoming days and weeks and months. So I have no idea when I'm going to get back to these. Okay, these videos that I've been doing here in this apartment for the last 3.5 years. Now, I could be at the house for a week and we decide that Mom functions well enough on her own, and that's it, and we just go back to the status quo and everything is the same as it's been, and I'll be back here and I'll be resuming. Or it could be a major upheaval and I end up moving back home, and I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen in the upcoming days and weeks and months. So this could be the last one of these that I do for quite some time. I just don't know. Okay, I'm not going to be able to finish the Gospel of John. It would have been nice. I was kind of trying to hope for that, but not realistic. However, I can't get through the first half of it. We're halfway through chapter 12, and chapter 12 itself is the halfway mark of this book. So we are going to finish chapter 12 today, and then we'll at least have half the Gospel of John over. This chapter kind of climaxes Jesus' public ministry as recorded in the Gospel of John. At the end of this chapter, it's going to be basically the last night, and he's going to be done speaking to the people, and the rest of the book will focus on his conversations with his disciples, his apostles, and then his arrest, trial, crucifixion, and resurrection. And so this all here in the second half of chapter 12 is probably occurring on the last day of Jesus' public ministry, which I think is either Tuesday or Wednesday of that last week in Jerusalem. In the other Gospels, we have more information about what Jesus did during that week after he arrived in Jerusalem on Sunday on the back of the donkey. John does record that for us as well, but the other Gospels all report other things and other confrontations and discussions and arguments and conversations that he's having. And John doesn't record that. Again, this is one of those things where John is differentiating himself from the other Gospels. He is not repeating the same material the other Gospels already wrote 3 times about Jesus' last week in Jerusalem, but he is revealing some information to us about that last week and probably the last day that the other Gospels did not mention. And this seems to be like the actual ending of Jesus' ministry. So it sounds to me like this is pretty much how his public ministry came to an end on the last day, Tuesday or Wednesday of that week that he was speaking to the people. John 12, starting in verse 20. Now there were some Greeks among those who went up to worship at the feast. Now these Greeks are Gentiles, clearly. They are probably, well, certainly, amongst that group of Gentiles that had come to believe in and honor the God of the Jews, but had not made themselves fully Jews. That seems to be what's going on. We see a few of these instances. There are other foreigners who talk with Jesus occasionally in the Gospels. In the book of Acts, Peter is going to go to the house of a Roman centurion called a Roman commander called what is that guy's name? Cornelius. That's it. Who would be this category of a Gentile who honors the God of Israel, but does not A Jew did not go so far as to have himself not castrated, but circumcised, not castrated, and is not a full Jew. You can become a full Jew. You can become fully immersed in the Judaism. Judaism is both a religion and an ethnicity. So if you identify fully as a Jew, you can be converted into a Jew, and then I guess your descendants will be considered Jewish by birth. It always has been kind of a weird mix of religion and ethnicity. And that's part of the problem of the book of John. The people of the day saw themselves as special because of their birth, because of their ethnicity, and it's more than that. Anyway, and so these are Greeks. These are not Jews. They haven't gone through the whole circumcision and all that process, but they do honor the God of Israel, and they had apparently come to Jerusalem for this Passover. They were among those who went up to worship at the feast. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, apparently a Greek territory, with a request. "Sir," they said, "we would like to see Jesus." Philip went to tell Andrew. Andrew and Philip, in turn, told Jesus. So probably what's going on here is that Jesus is in the temple courts, most likely the court of the women. That's what they call it. That is where a lot of his conversations took place. Because all Jews could go into that court. That's where their treasury was. Like that's where their treasure boxes that people would put money into. So in that story in the other Gospels of Jesus watching the widow put the 2 coins in the treasure box or whatever. Like that's happening in this area that we would call there's called the court of the women, because that is the area that all Jews could mingle in. You go beyond there, and women aren't allowed to go any further, so it's just Jewish men. And then you go beyond that, and it's just the priests. And even Jesus wasn't a priest, so even he couldn't go that far. And then you go beyond that, and you go to the room where only the high priest can go. So Jesus is probably in the area where all ethnic Jews can go, including women. But these are not ethnic Jews, these are Greeks, so they can only stay on the outside. So they probably want to see Jesus, who is currently, most likely, teaching farther back in the temple area where they can't get to because they're not Jews. So they somehow flag Philip, they get his attention. Maybe he's out there walking around, I don't know. And they get him to go get Andrew, and the two of them go get Jesus. Or at the very least, they tell him about him. I don't know if Jesus actually meets these men or not. It doesn't actually say that he does. It just says that they told him about these Greeks who would like to see him. So Jesus replied. Now again, I don't know if he's talking to these Greeks or is just speaking out loud in front of the Jewish crowd that he's speaking to. He says, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified." So now the hour is here. This apparently was the signal that Jesus had been waiting for about when his hour was going to come. And throughout this gospel so far, we've been talking about Jesus' hour and how it hasn't come yet. Well, now he says it's come. The hour is now here. Now that non-Jews are looking into Jesus, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. I tell you the truth. Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. That's the only way it can become a tree or a kernel of wheat and produce crops that will then in turn produce more. The man who will, so that's what Jesus is going to have to do. He's going to have to go and die so that the church then can form. We're going to talk about that a lot in the upcoming chapters, where he talks about his departure and how when he goes, he will send the Comforter, the Spirit, to them. And from that point, they can go on and evangelize the world. So for that to happen, Jesus has to die. He has to, in this case, be a seed that goes into the ground and dies. The man who loves his life will lose it, while the man who hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. So whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. Now my heart is troubled. So now the hour is here, he's feeling the pressure. We read about this in the other Gospels too. Now that the time has come, it's getting heavy on him. Luke will say in a line in the Garden of Gethsemane that he was sweating huge drops of sweat that were like blood. So this is not easy. He is troubled. My heart is troubled. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it was for this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. That's what he's going to say and say. He doesn't really want to do this. We read in the other Gospels kind of more detail about how Jesus, when the time came, it was tough. He really didn't want to go through with it, but he did because the Father willed him to. It's kind of one of those things, I believe, thinking of it from my human perspective, something that I can relate to, where you have something that you know is going to happen, like a doctor's appointment, or something that you know is scheduled for a certain time, and you're not looking forward to it, but it's off in the future, months or whatever, and you just don't really think about it. You know it's going to happen someday, but since it's still down the road a bit, it's not really forefront of your mind all the time. But as you get closer and closer, you get more and more agitated about it until the time finally comes, and it's like, oh, here it is. I wish I could get out of this, but I can't. I used to have those kinds of things. I was a psychiatric patient for 20 years, and there was a period of time where I had a good rapport with my psychiatrist. In fact, when he retired, I decided not to continue with the practice of somebody else because I had known that particular man for so long and had gone through so much, with him. Like, my issues happened while I was with him in the practice, and it's like, well, I would never have that kind of bond with anybody else. And I had matured to the point where I could handle myself well enough, so I did not continue. But there was a time when I was younger when I had like these regularly scheduled check-ins. I would go and we'd have our interviews and I'd talk and all that, and it was always pleasant and peaceful. But I always get nervous about it ahead of time too. But I wouldn't have to think about it until it was, and they were regularly scheduled, so I always knew when the next one was going to be. But I really wouldn't think about it until it was getting pretty close, and then it would start getting on me. It isn't clearly as much of a pressure-sensitive situation as Jesus is facing here, but the idea of an event that's occurring that you know is going to happen, that is not going to be pleasant, you're not looking forward to actually doing it, but for a long time, it's down the road far enough that you don't really lose sleep over it. Like, it's not troubling you constantly. Then it actually comes. It's like, now it's here. Like, this is what I've been thinking about. This is what I've been talking about. Another good example is when my dad died. My dad. I knew my dad was an older man. I had older parents in general, and I knew growing up all my life that I was going to spend more of my life without my dad than with my dad. And I was just kind of waiting for it to happen. My uncle died when I was 8 years old, and that was the first visitation and funeral that I went to. And I remember, seeing him, my uncle, in the casket, and that really shook me. And it shook me because I lost my uncle, but even deeper than that, it shook me because I knew, even at 8 years old, that someday I was going to be my dad in that casket. Not that casket, but a casket. And that happened 23 years later. Almost, right to the month, November 89 to November 2012, it did happen. And the hardest moment of all was right before I went into the room to see him for the first time. After he had died, there was a period, of course, you have that period of time where everything is being prepared. And in our case, the way it worked out, we had the visitation and funeral like a day later than usual. So we had like even an extra day just to kind of sit around and think about it. And this has been what I've been waiting for 23 years. I was 31 years old. I saw my uncle in a casket when I was 8, and this is what I've been kind of waiting for 23 years. And so it was the moment I've been waiting for pretty much my entire life at that point. And the hardest moment of all was right before I went in there, right before I went into the viewing room, in the funeral home, in the private family. This was, of course, before the visitation. But it was private family viewing, and like when I actually saw him, like the pressure was relieved tremendously. Like that moment had finally happened, that moment that I had been waiting for and dreading for 23 years. That I always knew was going to happen someday. I didn't know when, but I knew that at some point in the future, this event that I was not looking forward to, and that I had been hanging over my head all my life, was going to happen. And so when it finally did, like when I actually did go in there, and I saw him, like that was that actually was like a relieving experience, because now like that's over. That is not a past event that I'll never have to look forward to again. That will always be behind me now. And it's better to have it kind of behind me than in front of me still. Now, I wish I still had Dad to talk to. But there is a certain relief in having that as a past event that I'll never have to look forward to again. And I think it's kind of similar here. Like, this is an event that had to happen in history. It had to occur. And as we'll see, when it does happen, it's like, that's it. It's never going to happen again. And there's tremendous cause for joy because of that. For Jesus and for everyone. Okay, it's like it's a glorious event to have happened. It's not a fun event to happen, to go through, to experience. But once it's over, the party can begin, and it will never end. So he's going to go through with it. He doesn't really want to. Now that the moment has come, his heart is troubled. But if he said, we said in the other Gospels, if I wanted to get out of this, I could. If I wanted the Father to send 12,000 or 12 legions, that's actually 72,000 angels to get me out of this, that would happen. Okay? If I asked the Father, if I told the Father, I'm done, I'm not going to do this, I won't have to do it, but I'm going to do it because the Father wills it. So I'm not going to say, save me from this hour. Instead, I'm going to say, Father, glorify thy name. Then a voice came from heaven. I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again. The crowd that was there and heard it said it had thundered. Others said an angel had spoken. Jesus said, this voice was for your benefit, not mine. Time for judgment on this world. Now the prince of this world will be driven out. We'll find out that that's referring to the prince of darkness, Satan. We'll read that. If that isn't already clear, that will become clear in the epistles as Paul presents it. But I, when I am lifted up from the earth on the cross again, will draw all men to my... the cross and the ascension. It has a double meaning. He's going to be lifted up on the cross, literally lifted up and suspended in between the earth and the sky on the cross. And later on, he's going to be lifted up as he goes back into heaven in the ascension. So that kind of refers to both things there. Will draw all men to myself. He said this to show the kind of death he was going to die. The crowd spoke up. We have heard from the law that the Christ, the Messiah, will remain forever. So how can you say the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is the Son of Man? Then Jesus told them, you are going to have the light just a little while longer. I mean, literally we're down to hours at this point. In fact, for these people, not even that, because he's about to leave and go back with his disciples. So, I mean, literally, the light is on its way out right now as we speak even. Walk while you have the light, because before darkness overtakes you. The man who walks in the dark does not know where he is going. Put your trust in the light while you have the light, so that you may become sons of light. When he had finished speaking, Jesus left and hid himself from them. So that's basically the end of Jesus' public ministry. I presume that happened likely at the end of the last day of teaching, either Tuesday or Wednesday in Jerusalem during that last week. I presume it just makes sense to me that's probably how his ministry, his public ministry, ended. We're not completely done yet. We still have the last few verses of chapter 12 to go through. But this is going to be the response of the people, the Jews in particular, to Jesus. And not just this particular event, but kind of an overall response to his ministry during his time with them, while the light was with them. And that goes back to what John said at the very beginning of the gospel, that he came to that which was his own, but his own received him not. And so we're going to be seeing how that became true with the overall rejection that he experienced from his own.